So welcome back to another day of exciting iOS programming. Today what we're going to be talking about is making universal apps. So apps that run on both the iPad, iPhone, iPod Touch. So the idea is that before coming to this class, you should have read thoroughly chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 2 in the book is making the Hello World app from a view-based template. View-based templates make things nice and easy. But the universal apps are a little harder to make, so we're going to go into the details of making the universal app in a couple different ways and really understanding that template and what's going on. To be honest, it's a little bit of an advanced interface builder topic, but it's so low level that I wanted to do it right up front, just so you get the idea. So whenever you're on the iTunes store, the App Store, you've probably seen that some apps have this little plus icon beside them and others do not. This one has a little plus. This plus icon means it's a universal app. To be honest, right now, you should always make universal apps. You should figure out how to do it from the get-go and just always make universal apps. So we're doing that today. So with a universal app, it's the same app. It just looks good on all the different platforms. And if you know how to do it, it's really not that bad. It is hard when you're new, but once you get it, you'll just know how to do it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make 3 apps. We're going to make the Hello World app on an iPhone using the view-based application template. Then we're going to make Hello World using the window-based application template. And then whenever we're really comfortable with that, we're going to step up and we're going to make a universal app. And for that, you're required to use the window-based application template. So we're going to give all these a name: iPhone View, iPhone Window, and Universal Window. So we're going to do three times, basically making the same thing all 3 times. So let's get started. So the easy one is the Hello World from the view-based template. This one we're going to knock out in no time at all. So go ahead and start a new project. Select the view-based template option. You can see that from a view-based template, you're required to pick a platform. I think this is a mistake. I hope they fix this someday because there are things they could do. But go ahead and pick iPhone, and let's go ahead and start this up, and let's call it Hello. Change my folder real quick. Hello iPhone View. So we're using the iPhone and a view-based application template. The view-based application template does a lot of things for you. It goes ahead and it creates 2 classes for you, an app delegate and a view controller. And then more importantly, it creates these 2 zip files for you, and it does a lot of connections for you to start things off. Let's just glance at them real quick. We're going to hit them really in depth. The first thing it made for you is this main window zip file. If we look at the main window zip file, we can see that it created a couple objects. So it's got the files owner and first responder, which you read about. Those are part of every zip file. Then it created an app delegate object. It created a view controller object of the specific types of classes that we made. So we've got specific classes here. So it made an object for each of those classes. And then it also made a window object. The window object is what you see right here. So this whole thing is the window. So it's the first visible component. In addition, it also made a second zip file for you. And in this zip file, the files owner is already set up as the Hello iPhone View view controller. And you can see that it made a view in here. And the only thing that you added in Chapter 2 was you added a single label. So let's go ahead and just drag and drop a label over. I didn't really talk about it because you should have done it in the book. And you can change properties for the label, to your heart's content. And so you've made a Hello World label. And at this point you can actually run it in the simulator. You could run it on a device if you had a device connected. And you've made the Hello World app. So this is Hello World. Made it many times. Pretty easy. So that was the easy version. Now before we jump into the next version, let's stop and reflect just a little bit about what happened here. So it did a lot of stuff for you. There are 6 objects that are important whenever we're looking at the Hello World demo. There is a UI application. This is an object that's made behind the scenes. It's like every application has exactly one of these. It's so important you don't get to touch it, right? They kind of make it behind the scenes. I'll talk about where it gets made. You have your application delegate, so some class that implements the UI application delegate protocol. We'll look at that a little bit more. We have a UI window. If you remember that zip file, it made a UI window. We have the view controller, and then the view controller has a view and a label. So these are the 6 objects that we care about in this sample. 3 of them are actually visible. So the 3 that are visible are the window, the view that's linked to the view controller, and the label. So we've got a view, a window, a view, and a label. Each of these objects has to be created, and each of these objects has to become a subview of the bigger one. So the UI window is automatically visible, so we're going to have to add the view, and then the view has to add the label. Let's look at how the magic happens. How do these 6 objects get created, and how do the 3 views get added in the view hierarchy? So to kind of look at the example a little more closely, everything starts with main. So there's a file called main.m. You should never touch this file. You shall never change it. It will just be part of every project. If we look at this file, it has one function. That function is main. Objective-C is a superset of C, so everything starts with main. It's passed in the argument count, the argument variables. They're not really used. You do pass them along, but you don't really do anything with them. Looking at this file, the first thing that happens, it creates an auto-release pool, which we'll cover later in the course. And then it calls this function, UI application main. You can see that this is actually a C function. And the way this works is calling this function does all the behind the scenes stuff to get things started. It creates the UI application, and it calls that first zip file. This function actually doesn't return. It doesn't return until your program ends. And then when your program ends, it'll release the pool and it'll exit. So this is going to be running throughout the life of your app. What this does is it makes the UI application, and then the UI application looks at the info plist. The info plist has all the settings that configure this app and how it runs. You played with this from chapter 2 in the book by making an icon file. This is also where you can change the display name. These two, the icon files and display name, they get used a lot. The one that you probably didn't look at is right here at the bottom. Main nib file base name. So this says load up this zip file. So it loads up main window. And when main window loads, what main window does is it creates 3 more objects. It creates the app delegate, the view controller, and the window. You'll also notice that it made a connection for us. You can see that the app delegate is already connected to the window, and then it's already connected to the view controller as well. So these connections were made. So it made 3 of those objects. So at this point it made the application, it made the application delegate, it made the window, and it made the view controller. Whenever you make the view controller, another fun thing happens is if you look at this view controller, you can see that it also has a nib. So it is loaded from this nib. So whatever this nib does, this is also going to get done at startup. So if we go look at that nib, we can see that it makes the view object. It also was nice and it connected the view controller to the view for us. And then the one thing we did is we made this label. So that's where the 6 objects come from. The top one happens from that like magical low-level C function. That loads up a nib that makes these next 3, and then that view controller nib makes the last 2. So that's where all the objects get made. The other thing that has to happen is you have to add the window to the view, or sorry, the view has to go in the window, the label has to go in the view. The label goes on the view in the nib file. So by dragging, whenever we dragged it on, that put it on there. But this one, the view going on the window, that was actually done in code. They were sneaky. They did it for you in code. You can see they took the window and they added a subview. They added the view controller's view. If you want to go look at that, this is going to be important because whenever we start using the window template, this stuff isn't going to be there. So we're going to have to know what they did. What did this template do for us? They made an outlet to the view controller. They said it's an instance variable. They also said, hey compiler, don't throw a warning, this class exists. And then the important thing that they did is they added its view to the window. So this was an important step. They also took care of the memory management. They did the synthesize, and then at the bottom they released it. So those are the things that they added. You're about to know a lot more about them because you're about to go do them. So everything that's in blue here, when we switch to the window template, we're going to have to do that ourselves. So without further ado, let's do Hello World with the window template. So if we make a new project, this time we're going to go from the window-based template. We're going to make an iPhone app from a window-based template. I'm going to call it Hello iPhone Window. So it's going to only work on the iPhone, but it's going to start from a lower level template. And we're just doing this for the purpose of example. If you only wanted to make Hello World, use the view-based template by all means. But we want to prepare you for making a universal app, so we want to show you this step first. Some things that you'll notice. Again, it's going to make the application for us, so that's done. That's no big deal. So that object is made. Check. The next thing you'll notice is that it does still go ahead and load the main window nib file. If we look at the main window nib file, you can see that it made an app delegate for us. So this one's done. Check. It also made a window for us. So this one's done. Check. But that's where it ends. These other 3 we're going to have to make ourselves because we didn't get them in this template. So let's start off in code. So we're going to make an instance, but let's go ahead and make the class first. So we're going to make a new class. So we're going to make a new, we're going to make a new file. We're going to say a view controller. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the view controller and we're going to make the nib all in one fell swoop. So before they did this for you, but now we have to make them ourselves. Let's just call it Hello World View Controller. And then we'll go ahead and drag the zip file down into the resources area. And so at this point we have a class that we're going to use to make stuff with. And so what we want to do is we want to create an instance of this class. So let's go ahead into the main window, or sorry, the main window zip file. And what we want to do is we want to create an instance. So classes are factories that create objects. Interface Builder makes objects themselves, so it makes instances. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over View Controller and drop it into Main Window. What you can think of is this is actually building the object graph. So like whenever we run this, this is going to be an object that's in memory. But what I want to do is I don't want to make a generic view controller. I actually want to make a specific type. So I can hit Command 4, or I can just click on the info window over here. And the type of object I want to make is I want to make a Hello World view controller. So this is the view controller I want to make. And what I want to do is I want to load it from a nib. It turns out that it would pick, since the zip file has the same name as this file, it would do it automatically. But I'm going to go ahead and manually say use this nib file. Cool, so that's a good thing. As far as connecting things in this window goes, you can see the app delegate is already connected to the window. But we're going to need, there should also be a connection to the view controller. It doesn't show up in the list here yet because we haven't done it in code. So let's go ahead and let's add that code. So the code that we're going to add is we're going to add some code to the app delegate. So we're going to add a Hello World view controller. And so let's go ahead and let's do this work. So we want to say there is a class coming called Hello World View Controller. And we're going to say I want a pointer to one of those objects. I'm going to call mine Root View Controller. And then we'll cover properties more, but for now you can kind of see the pattern. And we're going to say give us an outlet to a Hello World view controller. So if I hit save and I go back to Interface Builder, now you can see, boom, it's got another outlet. I want to connect that outlet to this object. So this created the object, and then this outlet gave us a reference to that object. An object without a reference is not as useful, right? So now we've got a way to reference that object. Since we're working in code, let's go ahead and add to the implementation file. So this gave us a connection to this object. And now what we want to do on this side is we want to add this object to the window. So we've got to do a couple things. First, we've got to import the header file to the Hello World view controller. We've got to synthesize our property. We'll talk more about synthesizing properties as we move on. I think it's really a good idea to kind of learn as you go, because if I touch all this stuff up front, by the time you learned enough, you'd be sick of programming, right? So we definitely like throw you in the deep end, right? And we'll explain all the details. So we're going to say we are synthesizing this thing, and then we're going to add its view. Note that we don't just add the object, we add its view to the window. And then to be a good memory management delegate, I'll go ahead and release it. We will be talking more about memory management later. Cool, so now I have got a connection to view controller. I'm adding its view to the screen. Let's go in and let's look at this view controller, the zib file for this view controller. One nice thing that happened is since we made all three of these together, the .h, the .m, and the zib file, it went ahead and made the zib file with some connections for us, which is nice. It knows what type it is, which is good. In the next step, we're going to have to fix this. And you can see that it's already connected to the view. So the only thing we need to do is we need to do what we did before, which is we need to instantiate a label. We also need to add this label to the view. You can see that that was done for us. So the view has as a subview the label. So when we did the drag, two things happened. It created an instance of the object, and it also added it to the view, which is cool. So I'm sure I forgot something, but we'll test it at this point. So we've created all of the objects. We've added the view to the window, and then Interface Builder added the label to the view. So if I did everything without making any mistakes, it should work at this point. Let's see. So I ran it. Cool, shows up, looks just the same as it did before. This time we did it with the window perspective, but you can see that we got the same result. I think this time it's white, whereas last time it may have been gray. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before. The view-based template gives you a gray background by default, whereas the window-based template just gives you white. So there's a slight difference between them. That's funny. Cool. So we learned a lot about what happens behind the scenes. Now the goal is universal apps, right? We want to make universal apps, and we're building up to it. Now we're ready. So we're going to make Hello World as a universal app, which was the whole point of everything we've done so far. So let's do it. Close this one down. File, new project, view-based application, universal app. Alright, universal app. The reason we went to all this trouble is because the view-based doesn't have it as an option. There are only a couple that give you a universal option. Actually, do any of them right now? I think later one of them will, but I think right now, if you want a universal app, you start with a window base, so you do all this work yourself. So I'm going to call it Hello Universal Window. Cool. So lots of new stuff. We have an iPad folder. We have an iPhone folder. We have an app delegate for the iPad. We have a main window for the iPad. Same things for the iPhone. It's kind of like they're both created separately. So when we change the code, we're going to have to change it in two places, one for the iPad, one for the iPhone. The info.plist has a main nib for the iPhone called iPhone_zib or underscore iPhone.zib, and then there's a separate one for the iPad. So it's really a lot like what we did before, except for we're going to have to do it twice. There's some good things about universal apps, though. So let's do this. Let's make it for the iPhone, and then we'll time it, and we'll see how long it takes to make for the iPad. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our view controller. So we're going to say, let's make a new file. We're going to make a view controller subclass, but this time we're not going to make a zib with it. The reason we're not going to make a zib is we're going to make two different zib files, one for the iPad and then a different zib file for the iPhone. So it's going to use the same class but two different zib files. Alright, let's start this. So hello world view controller. Great. So hello world view controller is part of the battle. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make two different zib files. So we're going to make this will be the first time we've done this, right? So you'll notice that the nib files are not listed here. They're in the user interface area. We're going to make a view-based zib file. Right now I'm making one for the iPad. So I say iPad view zib. So I'm going to say hello world view There's debate about whether I should say view or view controller. It doesn't really matter. I'll just say view for now. So I've created a iPad view. One thing you'll notice is that it didn't assume the correct class type. That's to be expected. Just know that when you create a zip file from scratch, you'll have to change the type of file for file's owner. Also, whenever you change it, you lose the connection to your view, which is kind of annoying. So I try to, right when I open it, I change the class, and then I reconnect it to the view. So those things are new. You've not learned those before. The thing you're probably pretty good at is you're probably pretty good at making a hello world label. Make this one giant. Hello world. I said I was going to make it giant. Cool. And then we're going to make one for the iPhone as well. We're going to say that this zip file is for the iPhone. And I'm going to call it Hello World View iPhone. And I'm going to play the same game with it. I'm going to change its type. So I'm going to change its class type. So the file's owner is going to be a Hello World View controller. I'm going to reconnect my view. And then I'm going to add my label. Cool. We're not done yet. Don't get too excited. So what we've still got to do is we have done a couple things. The application got made for us. The app delegate gets made for us. The window's made for us. We haven't actually made this object yet, but whenever we do make it, we have done the later steps. So let's go ahead and make that object. That was done in the main window. So you can see the main window makes the app delegate in the window, but it has not yet made a view controller. We don't want to make a view controller though, we want to make a Hello World view controller. And then we want to connect the outlet, except we haven't written that code yet. So let's hop back over and write the code. So this is just what we did before, so I'm going to do it fast. So we say there's going to be a class called this, and then we're going to make iVar. Pause the video if I'm going too fast for you, right? And then we're going to, now we've got an outlet to it, so now we can go make a connection. So we'll go ahead and make our connection. And then this step is important. We have to say what nib file this is going to load from. Before there was only one option, right? Now there's two. Do you want to load it from the iPad version or the iPhone version? Well, this is main window iPhone, so we want to load the iPhone version. And then to make that window actually appear on the screen, we're going to import the header file. We're going to synthesize the property, and then we're going to say window, add subview, add this view controller's view. And then if we want to be good memory management citizens, we'll release it when we're done. Cool. So if I have done everything correctly, you should be able to run it on an iPhone, and it should pop up there. If you try to run it on an iPad, however, it's not set up yet. So it will launch and be a white screen. For the iPad, the things we have to add are we have to add the code. So I'll do that again real quick. So this is identical to what we did with the iPhone. It's kind of a shame that you're writing the same code twice, right? What you're going to do. I'm just going to call it root view controller again. I'm going to give myself an outlet. A little tedious to do the same thing twice. I'm going to go into the main window, and I'm going to make the view controller. I'm going to set its type to Hello World View Controller. I'm doing it fast this time because I've done it twice. I'm going to add the connection. So now I've made it. I've added the connection to it. The only thing I need to change is I need to say what nib it's going to come from. This one I want to come from the iPad nib. So you can see we've got one class, right? So one backing class, but then two different zip files. I think I've kind of said this a couple times now. And then the only code that is remaining is I need to actually add the code to make it draw on the screen. So I need to say window, add the subview of the root views view. Cool. So now if I run it in the simulator for the iPad, it should show up, and it should be my giant letters. So hello world in giant letters. So it's subtle. A lot of low-level stuff here. But in both cases, we're making the same 6 objects. We're making the same view hierarchy additions. And what we've done is we've made a universal app. To be honest, I think this should be a template. I think that the style of having one view controller class with 2 independent zip files, this really should be a template, right? I wish I could say view-based application, select universal, and get what I want. That's currently not the case. So you need to know how to use these steps. To be honest, I think that they're the most important steps that you could use to get started, because this is how you make a simple view-based universal template. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. There's one other thing I wanted to mention about icons. The book, you made an icon for Hello World that was a 57 by 57. One of the things you can do with icons is if you call it just icon.png, you don't have to even set the icon file here. If you name it icon.png, it will automatically assume it. Also, if you are working with universal apps, instead of icon file, you actually want icon files. And so you want to add different icon files. So you want a 57 by 57 for the iPhone, a 114 by 114 for any of the high-res screens. So that'd be the iPhone 4, the iPod Touch 4th generation. You also need a 72 by 72 for the iPad. And then you also need a small version for when it shows up inside the settings bundle. So there are actually 6 icons that you need, 6 icon files you should make with every project. And you should also add a file called iTunes Artwork. This is only useful when you're doing ad hoc testing, and also that when you leave off the extension. I don't know why, that's just why it works. That's just how it works. And all of these have a special name as well. So inside icon files, you can say what their names are if you want to make it something unique. But what I do is I just always use these names, and then you never have to set anything in the info.plist. So these names are special sacred names that Apple says, if you name it this, we will find it in your folder, and it will get used as the icon. Whew, long day. So that's what we were shooting for today. Hopefully you have a much better understanding of how to make universal apps, and you have a much better understanding of how the template works, how Interface Builder makes these objects, and I assure you it will all come together after you do it 30 or 40 times. Okay, that's it for today.